Howdy neighbors, I'm Mike McCarty bringing you another episode of the Rough and Tumbled. Certainly glad to be able to bring this to you. This goes back quite a few years ago, and it happened on the Amoco Dick Wells lease. Yes, I did a lot of work for Amoco Production. They were a great company to work for. I worked for probably most all the major oil companies and a whole lot of independent companies. But this story has a little bit of a specialness about it because back when my grandfather came to East Texas from the oil fields of southern Arkansas, where he had been roughnecking up there, he had saved his money. And I've mentioned, I think, in another episode about him opening business in Sexton City. But before that, he had set up a little store right on the Dick Wells, right on this road that was the main road from Kilgore going south. They didn't have 135/42 back then. And he had that store right there. And of course, they lived in the back of it. And it was right on the Dick Wells lease. And this particular story is about where we went out there to move a 480 volt power line because Amoco was expanding or doing something, I don't remember exactly what, to that tank battery, and the power line was in too close, and so they needed us to move it out in order for them to do what they needed to do. Well, where we had to move the line was just grown up, all kinds of underbrush, and those old thick thorns all twisted, and it was thick stuff, tough to get in there and work with. And so we were in there, just myself and an apprentice, and we were cutting right of way so we could build this line around this battery. And boss man had brought a big old Pioneer chainsaw out there. Really way too big to be cutting this underbrush with. I kind of feel like he probably was trying to get something these other guys couldn't tear up. I didn't go around tearing stuff up. I always treat it like it was my own, and my stuff is well taken care of. But anyway, it was hot. I think it was July. It might have been August, but it seemed like it was July. And we were out there cutting on that stuff, and I believe that apprentice had a brush axe with him, and I'd taken that saw and I'd cutting that brush off down low. Well, it was so thick, as you'd cut it, you'd cut a bunch of them, and it'd just kind of just stand there and start beginning to fall. And next thing you know, it's trying to lean over on you. So you'd get under there, you had to get under there to cut the bottoms, and it just kept leaning back on you. So you'd cut and you'd back off. You cut and you back off, and all that stuff trying to come back on you. And so, bending over like that and cutting, and hot as it was, sweaty, and that old saw got awful heavy. And one of those times when I was cutting and that stuff was coming back on, you had to kind of judge the rate at which it's falling. You try to figure out how fast to move back. It was kind of trying to cover me up, so I was backing out, and I let that old chainsaw just drop right into my knee, and it cut it all the way down in the bone, and that's not good. That's just not good. And I hollered at that apprentice, and he come over. He said, "Oh man," he said, "This, we got to get you to the hospital." And I said, "All right." I said, "Let's load up." And of course, that blood was going down in that boot. It was filling it up. And we got in that truck, and as we headed off, got on that company radio, called in. They said, "Well, go on up there to the doc's office in Kilgore, just the office, not the hospital, and that booger can fix you up." Well, he was an old military doctor, and he kind of rough around the edges. He wasn't military anymore, but he had been, and so he was used to dealing with people like the oil field people. He knew what to do and how to handle it. Well, got up there in that office, and they took me back in there and set me down on his table, And here he comes. He pulls that and looks at it and he says, "Oh, boy." He says, "What do you mean coming in here with something that minor?" He said, "Boy, I've had worse places on my eyeball." And I thought, yeah, right, sure you did. He said, "What are you trying to do, boy?" I said, "Well, Doc, I needed a break. I needed a break, and I thought I'd get off where I could rest a little while. And so, see, I'm not out in that hot sun right now." He said, "All right, boy, get on." He said, "Let me sew that thing up." He never even got out a needle to deaden it or anything. He got this big old needle, kind of, I think it's a little curved, and got that thread. It looked like saddle thread or something. he started sewing that old knee up, and it was pretty good place there. And he just sewed her right up, slapped me on the back, and he said, "Get on back out there, boy." And I'll never forget that. He had the bedside manner of a billy goat or something, you know. he just wasn't one bit gentle. But you know something? When he told me what he told me and acted like that, he made me so mad I could have just bit nails into. You know, I mean, because he wasn't any kind of considerate of my feelings or if it's hurting, nothing. And it just made me so mad I couldn't even feel him sewing that thing up. And so after I looked back on it, I got to thinking, I said, you know, that old boy knew exactly what he was doing. He did that on purpose so it wouldn't hurt me, you know. And I don't know what all else went into that equation, but that's the way it happened. And you know, that apprentice I remember, he was a good guy. I haven't seen him in all these years since either. Well, folks, that's this story for the Rough and Tumble. I sure would love to hear some of y'all's. It don't have to be out in the oil patch. Stories of life, stories where we've endured some things, where we've learned some things, where we've seen some things. If you could, I'd love to hear them. You linemen out there, like to hear from you too. You know, I know what you're dealing with. Well, would appreciate a like and a subscribe. Until the next time, I'm Mac McCarty saying so long for the Rough and Tumbled.